On ITV.
This is Granada with the national and world news now from ITN.
From ITN, News at 10 with Trevor McDonald.
Derbyshire wreck to give up its secrets in new inquiry. Ulster peace, Blair says it's agonizingly close. Mohammed Al Fayed meets the Diana crash judge. And the pet smugglers, why more owners are breaking the law. Good evening. More than 17 years after the bulk carrier Derbyshire sank in a typhoon off Japan with the loss of 44 British lives, the government reopened the inquiry today. It was the biggest British ship to be lost at sea. The inquiry was reopened because state-of-the-art video and photographic equipment have produced amazing underwater pictures of the wreck. They helped investigators piece together a more accurate picture of how the disaster happened. ITN's Helen Wright reports.
Made public for the first time today, these pictures, filmed by the investigation team, show the Derbyshire lying on the seabed 4,000 metres down. And it was these images that allowed experts to piece together what happened in its final hours. This computer simulation made by the team shows their conclusions. The Derbyshire was in the Pacific in high seas during a typhoon. When one wave broke over the bow, a hatch on a storage hold flew open, letting water pour in. The weight of water lowered the bow of the ship so it couldn't ride the waves. The heavy seas then destroyed the covers on the cargo hatches, one after another. That allowed thousands of tons of water to break into the holds. The vessel was swamped, and once it broke up, sank in a matter of minutes. In light of this new evidence, the Deputy Prime Minister has reopened an inquiry into the sinking.
You've seen today and witnessed one of the greatest feats of underwater detective work. Far greater than the work of the Titanic, which was found largely intact. In contrast to the Derbyshire, as you've seen, which are thousands of pieces. I shall now order a formal investigation to be reopened so that it can come to the conclusion why she foundered.
Angela Musa, whose father was one of the 44 people who died, is delighted by that announcement.
The end's still a long way off yet, but at least people are noticing and knowing what's going on. And maybe in the end we will get a result.
The report also suggests all bulk carriers, like this one, should have a double-skinned hull and that hatch covers could be strengthened. Relatives of those who died say today's report goes one step closer to answering the questions they've been asking for more than 17 years. And they hope if its recommendations are followed, the families of other seafarers will be spared the pain they've had to endure. Helen Wright, News at 10 at the Department of Transport.
The Prime Minister told ITN today just how close the government was to agreeing a draft settlement for the future of Northern Ireland. Shortly after his meeting with Sinn Féin today, he told our political editor Michael Brunson that an outline agreement was agonizingly close. The Sinn Féin president, Gerry Adams, said he thought Sinn Féin should rejoin the talks as soon as possible. Here is Michael Brunson's report.
The peace talks are due to resume in a fortnight's time, and Sinn Féin will be there after their period of suspension.
My own view is that we should seek to go back into the talks at the earliest possible opportunity.
Mr. Adams must consult his party's executive, but he says Sinn Féin's aim is clear.
Let me reassure everyone that Sinn Féin remains totally and absolutely committed to a real, lasting and durable settlement of the conflict in our country.
A little later, the Prime Minister took some time out of his European presidency duties for a live interview on ITN's Lunchtime News. Was not his Easter deadline for an agreement now unrealistic?
No, I am still optimistic. Maybe I'm stubbornly optimistic, but I am optimistic that we can get to that deadline, provided there's the goodwill there for people to negotiate. And for the time that Sinn Féin have been out of the talks, we've still been pressing on and negotiating and getting the parties to talk about the details of a settlement. Because the point is we are agonizingly close to agreeing certainly the framework or the outline of a settlement, but we've obviously got to get the detail right too.
The timetable Mr. Blair's working to is this: the multi-party talks to resume on March the 23rd, for an agreement to be reached by April the 9th, so that there can be a referendum in Ulster and perhaps in the Irish Republic too, sometime in May. But after his meeting with Mr. Blair tonight, the Ulster Unionist leader David Trimble has warned of a new difficulty, after the government said that IRA elements were involved in the murder of a Catholic man, Kevin Conway, after the murders which had led to Sinn Féin's original suspension.
We're dangerously close to a situation where people are at the talks while their friends and their comrades are engaged in violence for the purpose of influencing the talks. And that in itself is a breach of the Mitchell principles.
So once again today there's been a lot of talking. The Prime Minister has spent a lot of time personally on the problem. But we still don't have that moment when there is genuine negotiation, give and take on all sides to agree a framework for peace. Michael Brunson, News at 10, Downing Street.
2 weeks after a scare about the mumps, measles and rubella vaccination, our medical editors discovered that the number of such jabs has fallen by a third. The scare came from a report which suggested a possible link with autism. Today, the government's chief medical officer said the combined jab was just as safe as having 3 separate ones. Here's ITN's Lawrence McGuinty.
Doctors in clinics like this one in Bolton today are seriously concerned that parents are not bringing their children for the combined measles, mumps and rubella immunisation because they're worried about recent reports of a link between vaccination and autism. I understand that in some clinics, the number of children being brought forward for vaccination has dropped by a third, a trend the Department of Health says puts them unnecessarily at risk of catching childhood diseases. Worried parents are asking for 3 separate vaccinations instead of the combined MMR jab. But the Department of Health today dismissed reports of a link with autism as a scare story. And the government's chief medical officer told me separate vaccinations could leave children vulnerable.
It means bringing children on 3 separate occasions, and during that time they're in fact vulnerable to any of the 3 diseases that they haven't been immunised against. So there is some concern on our part that this would actually make things worse rather than better.
But parents who are campaigning against the triple vaccine are still worried.
Parents have to make up their own minds, and they cannot make an informed choice unless they have all the facts. And while there is the slightest doubt, if they're happier having their child immunised in single doses, then the government has to make the single doses available.
But doctors fear that could mean children are not vaccinated against potentially fatal diseases, or because of side effects that may prove to be non-existent. Lawrence McGuinty, News at 10.
Some of the people of Kosovo, driven from their homes by Serbian troops, made a sad journey back to their villages today. As the diplomatic efforts continue to bring the crisis to an end, the human suffering remains as poignant as ever, as ITN's Colin Baker discovered when he accompanied one group of ethnic Albanians.
8 days ago, they fled to escape the fighting. Now they're coming home, climbing the hill, bringing with them fresh loaves of bread and a fear of what they will find. For Fadil Idris on the right and his neighbours, the first sight was of Serbian graffiti painted on his walls. Around the corner, the community's new tractor had been smashed and rendered unusable, a bitter blow for these hilltop farmers. Nothing boded well for what they would find inside their homes.
Policy and army policy. Military, yeah.
It appears some police officers had used the house as a base while they attacked the village below. They'd left their mark.
There seems no other reason as to why this house should have been so trashed, except that these are ethnic Albanians. They weren't exactly the subject of the police operation which took place at the weekend.
The women and children who fled here are scattered in surrounding villages, still afraid to return. And the old men, grandfathers, they wait, unsure when they'll come back, uncertain who will come back first, the police or their families.
Down here in the valley, in the village of Prakaja itself, it's empty and it's quiet. And when you ask the people in the hills, where did these villagers flee to, they say they didn't. They never left. They're over here. Colin Baker, News at 10, Prakaja, Kosovo.
Wembley Stadium, generally regarded as the home of English soccer, could become the home of Arsenal Football Club. The Premiership club is frustrated at being stopped from expanding its own ground at Highbury and desperately wants to move. Our sports correspondent Graham Miller reports.
Wembley Stadium is valued at around £125 million by its owners, Wembley plc. Arsenal have made a formal bid to buy it because the club's expansion plans at Highbury, just a few miles away, have been rejected by the local council after protests from residents. But as part of plans for Wembley to host the 2006 World Cup, there's already a bid on the table from the English National Stadium Trust. This is the Football Association, the Sports Council and others backed by lottery money. The FA fear Arsenal's proposal could ruin their World Cup hopes.
As the Prime Minister and other senior ministers have said, a redeveloped national stadium at Wembley is a vital ingredient of the World Cup bid for 2006.
England's ambitions were boosted yesterday when Tony Blair met the president of FIFA at Downing Street. The government say Wembley must make a quick decision to keep the proposals on track. The future of Wembley is at the heart of England's bid for the World Cup in 2006. The plan is to knock the old place down, apart from the Twin Towers, and at a cost of £250 million, turn it into a new national stadium. This is what it would look like, but only if Wembley sold to the National Stadium Trust. Arsenal wouldn't get the lottery grant to help pay for the transformation. Wembley is part of English football history, but its future as the national stadium remains in doubt until its owners make up their minds. Graham Miller, News at 10, Wembley Stadium.
We have more of the day's news still to come on News at 10 tonight, including media mayhem as Mohammed Al Fayed sees to die in a crash charge. Britain's quarantine laws. We talk to the people deliberately breaking them to stop their pets from going behind bars. Mike Atherton fails again. Is his captaincy now in question? And the secrecy surrounding the songs that could become England's World Cup anthems.
We've written new lyrics, basically to encompass some of the things that happened. No,
don't go too far.
Not go too far. Some of the things.
Oh dear.
BT has made 13 price cuts in 2 years. Call BT on 0800 003 800 because you could be saving even more.
New Honey Nut Shredded Wheat. Golden honey and toasted nuts on light, crunchy little shredded wheat bites. The combination is more than delicious. They're Moorish. In fact, they're so Moorish that once you open a box, you'll soon find an open box is an empty box. With new Honey Nut Shredded Wheat.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could I have a box of electricity, please?
Economy or family size?
Economy, please.
Imagine a world where electricity wasn't invisible. You'd see the product that we make everywhere, in thousands of workplaces and millions of homes.
100,000 boxes for British Steel.
What brand of electricity do you use? Power gen.
Our name would be a household name.
Power gen.
Not only here, but abroad. In fact, it would be impossible to imagine life without us. PowerGen. We're the power behind power.
I'm a long-time woman.
To celebrate Quentin Tarantino's new movie, Jackie Brown, a tale of gun dealing and money smuggling, The Guardian is giving away an exclusive CD packed with music, interviews, and clips from the film. Just collect 3 tokens from The Guardian between the 13th and 23rd of March. Take them to an Odeon cinema and pick up your CD. The Guardian. Accept no substitutes.
This is the Braun Oral-B Ultra. The difference is all in the head. It's so compact it surrounds each tooth, reaching deep to remove more plaque than a manual toothbrush. Dentists recommend changing your toothbrush every 3 months. Braun say, simply change your toothbrush to the Braun Oral-B Ultra.
It's all clocks and watches nowadays. You'll save time with farm foods and money on Matthew's Turkey Breast Roast $1.99 or a dozen Farm Foods Dairy Cream Eclairs $1.69. Chicago Town Deep Pan Pizzas only $1.19 for two. That makes life easier. 2 Farm Foods omelets 99p. They're ready faster than a boiled egg.
Farm Foods will make you.
Welcome back. Mohammed Al Fayed spent 2 hours in Paris today with a French judge investigating the death of Princess Diana and his son Dodi. For some time, Mr. Al Fayed has been coming up with his own theories about what happened that night. He left today saying he had every confidence in the French investigation. ITN's Tim Hewitt is in Paris.
This is the Palais de Justice in Paris. It is here that facts surrounding Diana's death are being sifted by a judge. But if facts are few, there is an abundance of theory.
Mohammed Al Fayed began his day at the Ritz Hotel in Paris. It was the starting point for the journey that claimed the lives of his son and the princess. Mr. Al Fayed has produced some controversial theories about the crash in which they died. Those theories, and reports that he's ordered a parallel and private investigation, are said to have angered the judge in charge of the case. In interviews with journalists, Mr. Al Fayed has said of the crash, it was no accident, there was a conspiracy. He claimed more could have been done to save Diana and Dodi. He said a nurse told him Diana's last words. He also claimed that Dodi and Diana were engaged. He spent nearly 2 hours with the judge this afternoon, a meeting that apparently produced no fresh disclosures from either side.
How was your meeting? Great.
Mr. Al Fayed's lawyers said the purpose had been to bring him up to date with progress in the investigation.
Thank you. Mr. Al Fayed was grateful, and he has to say that to the judge and to the policeman who do the inquiry.
But on this occasion, Mr. Al Fayed himself had nothing to say.
The judge here has suggested his report will be ready within 3 months. For the time being, there seems no end to the rumour and speculation that have been going on since that fatal night last summer. Tim Hewitt, News at 10, Paris.
What could be the Europe of the future took shape over lunch at Buckingham Palace today. The leaders of 26 countries met the Queen at the start of a new forum called the European Conference. It's aimed at bringing Europe closer together. The Queen said the